The black ship appeared without warning above Earth's moon. It was bigger than any human city, its dark metal surface covered with patterns that hurt to look at for too long. The ship just sat there in space, silent and waiting, like a predator, watching its prey. Ambassador Hayek stood at the window of the Earth Defense Station, watching the alien vessel through the protective glass. He was a calm man with steady hands and gray hair, someone who had spent his life dealing with difficult situations. But this was different from anything he had ever faced. Behind him, Admiral Yuna checked her weapons systems for the 10th time in an hour. She was younger than Hayek, with sharp eyes and the quick movements of someone ready for a fight. Dr. Day sat at a computer terminal, studying the readings from their sensors. She was the smartest person Hyuk knew when it came to understanding alien life, but even she looked worried. The message had come 3 hours after the ship arrived. It was broadcast on every frequency humans used in perfect English and 20 other Earth languages. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking words that would change everything for humanity. Species designation human. You have achieved faster than light travel. You will send representatives to answer the call of the Galactic Tribute Council. A shuttle will collect your delegation in 6 hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate action against your world. Hayuk had tried to send messages back to the ship. He had tried every communication method Earth possessed. The aliens did not answer. They just waited, their massive ship blocking out stars with its bulk. The silence was worse than any threat they could have made. Now the 6 hours were almost over. A small craft had separated from the main ship and was moving toward the defense station. It looked like a drop of liquid metal, flowing through space without any visible engines or thrusters. The thing was the size of a passenger jet, but moved like it weighed nothing at all. "Sir," Admiral Yuna said, her voice tight with tension. "Our weapons are charged and ready. We could try to take out their shuttle before it reaches us." Her hand rested on the firing controls, but she did not move to activate them. They all knew it would be useless. If the aliens wanted to destroy Earth, they would have done it already. The fact that they were asking for representatives meant they wanted something else. Dr. Day looked up from her screens. "The energy readings from their ship are beyond anything we can measure properly. Whatever powers that thing, it makes our fusion reactors look like candles, and the materials their hull is made from, I have never seen anything like it. It absorbs most of our sensor beams and reflects the rest in patterns that make no sense." The alien shuttle arrived at their docking bay without asking for permission. It simply attached itself to the station's hull, and the airlock indicators showed a perfect seal. The aliens had matched their technology to human systems without any communication at all. That level of casual technological superiority made Hyuk's stomach clench with worry. "Well," he said, straightening his diplomatic jacket, "I suppose we should not keep them waiting." He picked up his briefcase, which contained copies of human laws, scientific papers, and cultural documents. It seemed foolish now, bringing paperwork to meet beings who could casually travel between stars, but it was all he had. The 3 humans walked through the station corridors toward the docking bay. Other crew members watched them go with expressions of fear and hope mixed together. Everyone knew this meeting would decide humanity's future, but no one knew what that future might look like. The alien shuttle's interior was nothing like the mechanical corridors of human spacecraft. The walls seemed to be made of the same flowing metal as the hull, but they glowed with soft light that came from everywhere and nowhere. There were no visible controls, no seats, no anything that looked familiar. The space was just an empty room with smooth walls that curved in directions that made human eyes water. A voice spoke from the air around them, the same mechanical tone they had heard in the first message. "You will remain still during transport. Movement may result in injury or death." The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate with a frequency they could feel in their bones. Through the transparent sections of the wall, they could see the defense station falling away as the shuttle moved toward the massive alien ship. The journey to the main vessel took only minutes, but it felt like hours. None of the humans spoke. What was there to say? They were flying toward a meeting that would determine whether their species lived free or died as slaves. The shuttle passed through what looked like solid metal, but turned out to be some kind of energy barrier. Inside the alien ship, the scale of everything was overwhelming. Corridors stretched away in all directions, tall enough to hold Earth's largest buildings. The air had a strange taste, like metal and ozone mixed together. Other aliens moved through the corridors, and each one was different from the others. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few moved in ways that defied easy description. Their bodies were covered in fur, scales, metal, crystal, or substances that had no Earth equivalent. The diversity was staggering, but they all had one thing in common. They moved with the careful steps of beings who knew their place in a hierarchy, beings who had learned to be afraid of something greater than themselves. The shuttle carried the human delegation deeper into the ship, past levels that could have housed entire cities. Finally, they arrived at what could only be the main council chamber. The room was so large that Earth's biggest sports stadiums could have fit inside, it with space left over. The ceiling was lost in shadows high above, and the far walls were barely visible through atmospheric haze. Thousands of aliens filled the chamber, arranged in sections that seemed to be organized by species. Each group had its own area with seating, or platforms designed for their particular body type. The noise was incredible, a mixture of sounds that no human throat could make. Clicking, humming, roaring, whistling, and frequencies that were felt rather than heard all blended into a chaotic symphony. At the center of the chamber, 3 massive heads rose from a floating platform. Each head was the size of a small building, with features that combined the worst aspects of reptile, machine, and something else entirely. The heads moved independently, looking in different directions, but their eyes all focused on the human delegation when the shuttle came to rest on a small platform near the center of the room. The noise in the chamber gradually died away as thousands of alien eyes turned toward the 3 humans. Hyuk felt like an insect under a microscope, tiny and fragile and utterly insignificant. But he forced himself to stand straight and meet the gaze of the 3-headed creature that obviously ruled this gathering. One of the massive heads spoke, its voice somehow reaching every corner of the enormous chamber without echoing. Species 7341. Designation human. You stand before the Galactic Tribute Council, the rightful rulers of this galaxy, and 47 others. You have achieved faster than light travel, which brings you under our jurisdiction according to laws older than your star. You will now choose your fate. The 3 massive heads continued speaking in voices that seemed to come from the air itself rather than from any throat or mouth. Your species must choose between 2 paths. Submit to tributary status and surrender 60% of your planetary resources each year, or face immediate subjugation and the complete destruction of your resistance. Every species in this chamber has made this choice. All have chosen wisely. Ambassador Hyuk felt his mouth go dry as the words sank in. 60% of Earth's resources would mean the end of human civilization as they knew it. Billions would starve. Cities would crumble. Everything humanity had built would be stripped away to feed the alien empire's endless hunger. But the alternative sounded even worse. We request time to consult with our government, Hyuk said, his voice somehow carrying clearly through the enormous chamber despite the thousands of aliens listening. This decision affects our entire species. We cannot make it without proper consultation. The 3 heads turned to look at each other, then back at the humans. You have 1 standard galactic cycle to decide. This equals approximately 26 of your hours. A shuttle will return you to your vessel. Use this time wisely. Many species have chosen poorly and paid the ultimate price. The journey back to the defense station passed in silence. Each of the 3 humans was lost in there. own thoughts about what they had just witnessed. The scale of the alien empire was beyond anything they had imagined. The council chamber alone contained representatives from hundreds of different species, each one presumably ruling multiple worlds. The humans were not just facing one alien race, but an entire galactic civilization that had existed for who knew how long. Once back on the station, they immediately opened communication channels to Earth. Within minutes, emergency sessions were beginning in every major capital city. President Minho called together the United Earth Assembly in Geneva, while military commanders across the planet began assessing their defensive capabilities. The debate started immediately and grew more heated with each passing hour. General Jun, speaking from the military headquarters in Seoul, was blunt in his assessment. "We have 43 operational warships, the largest of which is 800 meters long. Their escort vessels are larger than our biggest battleships, and we saw dozens of them just protecting their shuttle. We are talking about fighting an empire that spans galaxies. This is not a war we can win through conventional means." Dr. Day had returned to her laboratory and was analyzing every scrap of data she had gathered during their visit to the alien ship. The readings were disturbing in ways that went beyond simple technological superiority. Their power systems are based on principles we do not even understand yet. The energy output from their main ship is equivalent to a small star. But what worries me more is how casual they were about displaying this power. They are not trying to intimidate us. This is just normal for them. In parliament buildings and military bunkers around Earth, similar conversations were taking place. The aliens had not even bothered to make threats or show off their weapons. They had simply stated facts in the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather. This casual certainty was more frightening than any display of force could have been. President Minho addressed the United Earth Assembly as representatives from every nation watched via satellite link. "We face a choice that no human government has ever had to make. Do we surrender our freedom to preserve our lives, or do we fight and likely face extinction? I have called this emergency session because this decision cannot be made by any single person or nation. This affects every human being alive." The debate that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Some representatives argued for immediate surrender, pointing out that 60% of their resources was better than complete annihilation. Others insisted that life under alien rule would not be worth living. Still others proposed desperate military plans that everyone knew had no real chance of success. Admiral Yuna, participating via video link from the defense station, found herself in the unusual position of arguing against military action. "I have spent my entire career preparing to defend Earth from external threats, but I have never encountered anything like this. Their technology is so far advanced that our weapons might not even register as threats to them. We would be throwing away human lives for no gain." Lieutenant Bin, her aide, had been running calculations on the alien ship's defensive capabilities based on their sensor readings. His report was sobering. "Even if we could somehow concentrate every weapon on Earth into a single attack, we would barely scratch their hull. And that assumes they don't have any defensive systems we haven't detected yet, which seems unlikely given their level of technology." But not everyone was ready to give up. Captain Su, recently graduated from the Mars Defense Academy, raised questions that made the older officers uncomfortable. "With respect, we are thinking about this from the wrong angle. If they are so powerful, why do they need to demand tribute at all? Why not just take what they want? And why give us time to think about it?" Her questions sparked new discussions among the military planners. If the aliens were truly as dominant as they appeared, the entire concept of asking for tribute made little sense. A truly superior civilization would simply take what it needed without bothering to negotiate with primitive species. Dr. Day, working late into the night in her Seoul laboratory, began to notice patterns in the alien data that troubled her even more than their obvious technological advantages. The energy signatures from their ship showed fluctuations that suggested inefficiency. Their materials, while incredibly advanced, showed signs of age and wear that implied they were not being regularly replaced or upgraded. Most disturbing of all, the casual way they had displayed their strength suggested they needed other species to believe in their power. In the early hours of the morning, she placed a call to Ambassador Hayuk, who was still awake in his office at the United Nations building. "I keep thinking about what Captain Sue said. Why demand tribute instead of just taking what they want? I have been analyzing their technology all night, and I think I know the answer. They need us to cooperate because forced labor is less efficient than willing cooperation." Hayuk leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "You think they are not as strong as they appear?" "No. They are definitely strong enough to destroy us if they choose to. But I think their empire might be more fragile than they want us to believe. Think about it. If you truly ruled multiple galaxies, would you bother setting up elaborate tribute systems? Would you give primitive species time to consider their options? Or would you simply take what you needed and move on?" Meanwhile, in a small apartment in Busan, an elderly woman sat watching the news coverage of humanity's first contact with alien life. Dr. Hay was 97 years old and had lived through humanity's last great global war. She had seen her country occupied by foreign powers and had watched her people struggle to maintain their identity under oppressive rule. She understood something about resistance that the younger generation had never learned. As dawn broke over Earth, she made a phone call to Ambassador Hyuk. They had known each other for 40 years, ever since he had been a young student in her political science classes. When he answered, she spoke only a few words that would echo in his mind for the rest of the crisis. "Hayuk, my old student, I have been watching the news about these aliens who want our submission. Remember what I taught you about power and the appearance of power. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in the simple act of saying no. Remember who we are. Remember what it means to be human." She hung up without waiting for a reply, leaving Hayuk staring at his phone in the growing light of dawn. Around the world, similar conversations were taking place as humanity struggled to find its soul in the face of impossible choices. The clock was ticking toward their deadline with the Galactic Tribute Council, and the weight of their decision pressed down on every person alive. The 26 hours passed faster than anyone wanted them to. Emergency sessions continued around the clock as Earth's leaders struggled with the impossible choice. Military planners worked frantically on defensive strategies they all knew were hopeless. Scientists analyzed every scrap of data about alien technology, looking for weaknesses that did not seem to exist. Politicians debated surrender terms that would preserve some fragment of human dignity. But in the end, the decision came down to 3 people standing in the alien shuttle as it carried them back to the massive council ship. Ambassador Hayuk stared out at the stars through the transparent sections of the hull, thinking about Dr. Hay's words about the power of saying no. Admiral Yuna checked her sidearm one final time, knowing it was useless, but finding comfort in the familiar weight. Dr. Day clutched a datapad containing her analysis of alien technology, evidence that might support a choice that seemed like madness. The council chamber looked exactly as it had before, filled with thousands of alien representatives from across the galaxy. The 3 massive heads at the center of the room turned to focus on the returning human delegation. The noise of alien conversations gradually died away as attention shifted to the small platform where the humans stood. "Species 7341, the central head spoke in its mechanical voice. "You have had adequate time to consider your options. State your decision regarding tributary status." Hayuk stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite the impossibility of the situation. He looked up at the 3 heads that could have crushed him without effort, then let his gaze sweep across the thousands of alien observers. Every eye, antenna, sensor organ, and optical device in the chamber was focused on him. The weight of their attention was almost physical, pressing down like the gravity of a massive planet. "The United Species of Earth have carefully considered your demand," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "We have consulted with our governments, our military leaders, our scientists, and our people. After extensive deliberation, we have reached a unanimous decision." The chamber grew even quieter, if such a thing was possible. Some aliens leaned forward in anticipation. Others seemed to vibrate with nervous energy. The three heads at the center of the room remained perfectly still, waiting for the words they had heard thousands of times before from hundreds of different species. Hyuk took a deep breath and looked directly at the central head of the ruling tribunal. "Our reply is simple and clear: no." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. For a moment, absolute silence filled the enormous chamber. Then the alien translation systems began to stutter and whine, struggling to process what they had heard. The mechanical voices that provided simultaneous translation in hundreds of languages all seemed to pause at once, as if they could not believe what they were being asked to translate. "Clarification required," the central head said after several long seconds. "Your response indicates refusal of tributary status. This interpretation cannot be correct. Please restate your decision using proper protocols." Dr. Day stepped forward to stand beside Hyuk. "The word no exists in every human language we have ever developed. It carries the same meaning regardless of how it is pronounced or written. We are declining your offer. We will not pay tribute to your council." The chamber erupted into chaos. Alien delegates leaped from their seats, tentacles waving, wings flapping, mechanical appendages clattering against each other. The noise was indescribable, a mixture of shock, outrage, and disbelief expressed in sounds no human throat could produce. Some aliens seemed to be arguing with each other, others appeared to be checking their translation equipment, and still others were staring at the human delegation as if they had just witnessed something impossible. Admiral Yuna moved to flank, Hyuk on the other side, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. She knew the weapon was useless against alien technology, but the gesture was important for morale. The three humans stood together on their small platform, surrounded by thousands of aliens who had just heard something unprecedented in galactic history. The three heads conferred rapidly among themselves, their voices creating a low rumble that seemed to come from deep underground. When they turned back to address the humans, their tone had changed from mechanical certainty to something approaching confusion. "In 2 million years of council rule," the central head said slowly, "no newly contacted species has ever refused tributary status. Your response suggests either misunderstanding of your situation or complete lack of rational thought. We will provide clarification to ensure proper comprehension." The air above the chamber flickered, and suddenly a holographic display appeared, showing the surface of Earth. The images were clearly taken from orbit, showing major cities in perfect detail. The display zoomed in on specific locations, identifying military installations, government buildings, and population centers with casual precision. "Your species possesses 43 military vessels, none larger than 800 meters. Your most powerful weapons are fusion-based and would be ineffective against Council defenses. Your population of 8 billion individuals is concentrated in vulnerable urban centers. Your technological development is approximately 15,000 years behind current galactic standards." The display shifted to show the alien fleet surrounding Earth's solar system. Ships that dwarfed human battleships hung in space like predatory fish, their hulls gleaming with weapon systems that could sterilize planets. The numbers were overwhelming. Hundreds of vessels, each one capable of destroying human civilization single-handedly. Council forces currently positioned in your system possess firepower equivalent to 17 stellar explosions. Resistance would result in complete extinction of your species within one planetary rotation. These facts are not subject to negotiation or interpretation. Hyuk listened to the recitation of humanity's weaknesses without changing expression. When the alien finished speaking, he nodded politely as if he had just heard a weather report rather than a threat of genocide. "Thank you for the clarification," he said calmly. "However, our answer remains the same. No." The words seemed to have a physical impact on the assembled aliens. Some recoiled as if they had been struck. Others began making sounds that might have been the equivalent of nervous laughter. A few seemed to be checking their hearing or translation equipment, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The three heads drew together again, their conference lasting longer this time. When they separated, the central head's tone had shifted to something approaching incredulity. "Your species demonstrates either unprecedented courage or complete suicidal irrationality. Before final action is taken, state your reasoning for this." "Decision. What possible justification exists for refusing council authority?" Dr. Day glanced at her companions, then stepped forward. "We refuse because you asked us to. If your power was truly absolute, you would not need our consent. You would simply take what you wanted and move on. The fact that you are here, negotiating with what you consider a primitive species suggests that your empire is not as stable as you want us to believe." The chamber erupted into chaos again, but this time the sound was different. The aliens were not just shocked by human defiance. They were disturbed by the reasoning behind it. Several species began arguing among themselves, their translators working overtime to convert heated exchanges into understandable language. Admiral Yuna chose that moment to activate her personal communicator, speaking just loudly enough for the nearby aliens to hear. "Admiral Yuna to Earth Command. The Council has been informed of our decision. Prepare for possible retaliation and initiate defensive protocols." The transmission was brief and seemingly routine, but it had an unexpected effect on the alien observers. Several species began checking their own communications equipment as if they suddenly wondered what else the humans might have been doing during their 26-hour consultation period. The three heads rose higher on their floating platform, their eyes blazing with what might have been anger or might have been something else entirely. When the central head spoke again, its voice carried a note of finality that made the air in the chamber seem to vibrate. "Your defiance has been noted and recorded. Your reasoning has been analyzed and found inadequate. Final warning will now be provided to ensure complete understanding of consequences." The central head's voice echoed through the chamber with cold finality. "Since your species appears incapable of understanding the reality of your situation through words alone, a practical demonstration will be provided. Observe the consequences of defying council authority." The holographic display above the chamber shifted to show a view of space near the Proxima Centauri system. A small blue world hung in the darkness, barely visible against the star field. It was humanity's first interstellar colony, established only 15 years earlier by brave pioneers who had volunteered to spend their lives building a new world. 2,000 humans lived on that distant planet, most of them families with children who had been born under an alien sun. "Your colony world contains exactly 2,037 human individuals," the alien continued with mechanical precision. "They possess no military defenses and no means of escape. They will serve as an educational example for your species." Hayek felt his blood turn to ice as he realized what was about to happen. The aliens were going to murder 2,000 innocent people to make a point. He opened his mouth to speak, to beg, to offer anything that might save those lives, but Admiral Yuna's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait," she whispered, so quietly that only he could hear. "Trust me." 3 Council warships dropped out of hyperspace. Above the colony world, their massive hulls blotting out stars as they moved into attack position. Each ship was the size of a city, armed with weapons that could crack continents. The colonists below had no idea what was happening. They were farmers, scientists, teachers, and children whose only crime was being human at the wrong moment in history. "Surrender now," the central head demanded, "or watch your people die as an example to any who would defy the natural order of the galaxy." Admiral Yuna stepped forward, her boots clicking against the metal platform with sharp precision. Every alien eye in the chamber focused on her as she looked up at the three massive heads without showing any sign of fear or submission. "You are absolutely correct," she said, in a voice that carried clearly through the vast space. "A demonstration is definitely required here today." She raised her personal communicator to her lips, the small device looking pathetically inadequate in the face of galactic-spanning alien technology. But when she spoke, her words would change everything. "Admiral Yuna to Earth Command. Execute Protocol 7 immediately." The effect was instantaneous and completely unexpected. Across Earth's solar system, what the aliens had dismissed as primitive, human infrastructure suddenly revealed its true nature. Asteroid mining stations that had appeared to be simple industrial facilities opened like flowers, exposing massive railgun arrays that had been built into their cores. Orbital habitats that seemed designed for civilian use deployed weapon systems that made the Council ships look like toys from a previous millennium. The holographic display split to show events happening simultaneously across multiple star systems. Around Earth, hidden installations that had been mistaken for space debris or natural phenomena powered up with energy signatures that registered off the scale of alien sensors. But most shocking of all was what emerged from the dark side of Earth's moon. Something the size of a small asteroid began to move, revealing itself to be a warship of impossible proportions. Its hull was black as space itself, covered with patterns that seemed to bend light around them. Weapon ports opened along its length like eyes opening from sleep, and the energy readings from its power cores made the Council ships look like candles compared to fusion reactors. "What you are observing," Admiral Yuna said calmly as chaos erupted around them, "is why we said no." The display above the chamber showed the space around Proxima Centauri, where the three Council enforcement ships had been preparing to bombard the human colony. But they were no longer alone in that system. Ships that registered on no known sensors had appeared around them, vessels that seemed to exist in the spaces between space itself. The Council ships found themselves surrounded by a human fleet that had simply materialized out of nothing. Captain Sue's face appeared in the holographic display, transmitted from the bridge of a human warship that dwarfed the alien vessels around it. She was young, barely 30 years old, but she wore the uniform of Earth's deep space fleet with the confidence of someone who had been born among the stars. "Council vessels in the Proxima system," she said with polite formality. "You are trespassing in human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The alien ships tried to respond, but their communications were jammed by technology they could not understand. Their weapons powered up, but targeting systems that had worked perfectly for millennia suddenly could not lock onto the human vessels. Most disturbing of all, their engines would not respond to navigation commands. Dr. Day stepped forward to address the stunned Council chamber, her datapad now displaying information that made several alien species recoil in obvious fear. "Council representatives, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of humanity's technological development." The holographic display shifted again, this time showing star charts that covered multiple galactic sectors. Red dots marked human installations, and there were thousands of them scattered across space that the Council had believed was under their complete control. Colonies, research stations, mining operations, and military bases formed a web of human presence that extended far beyond what should have been possible for a species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. "We have had faster-than-light capability for approximately 50,000 Earth years," Dr. Day announced, her words hitting the chamber like physical blows. "We have been observing Council operations during that entire period. We have been studying your methods, your technology, and your weaknesses." The three heads at the center of the chamber drew together in urgent conference, their voices creating a subsonic rumble that made the air vibrate. When they separated, the central head's mechanical tone had changed to something approaching panic. impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected such extensive activity. No species could remain hidden from Council observation for such a duration. Lieutenant Bin's voice came through Admiral Yuna's communicator, transmitted from Earth's Strategic Command Center. Actually, your intelligence networks have been reporting to us for approximately 3,000 years. We hired your best agents. They work for Sol now. The chamber erupted into complete chaos as the implications of that statement sank in. Species that had served the Council for millennia began shouting at each other in dozens of languages. Some aliens were checking their own communication systems, suddenly paranoid about who might be listening to their conversations. Others seemed to be having what could only be described as nervous breakdowns, as their understanding of galactic politics crumbled around them. The holographic display now showed detailed information about Council operations that should have been classified at the highest levels. Ship movements, resource allocations, internal communications, and strategic plans were all laid out with casual precision. It was clear that humanity had been watching and recording everything for longer than most of the species in the chamber had been spacefaring. Your Council has maintained power through a combination of technological superiority and information control, Dr. Day continued, her voice somehow cutting through the chaos. But both of those advantages depend on your subject species believing in your strength. What happens when they realize you are not as powerful as you appear? Admiral Yuna activated another communication channel, this one broadcasting on frequencies that reached every ship in the Council fleet. All Council vessels in Earth's solar system, this is Admiral Yuna of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures, or we will demonstrate why 67% of your former tributary species have already switched sides. The statement was so outrageous that it took several seconds for the translation systems to process it properly. When they did, the effect on the assembled aliens was devastating. The idea that most of their empire had already defected was beyond their worst nightmares. But the casual way the humans presented this information made it impossible to dismiss as a bluff. Captain Sue's image reappeared in the holographic display, this time showing her standing on the bridge of what was clearly a human vessel of impossible size. Behind her, displays showed dozens of star systems where human and alien ships were working together in obvious cooperation. Council representatives, she said with the patient tone of someone explaining something obvious to children, we are prepared to negotiate new terms for galactic governance, terms that do not involve tribute, slavery, or the systematic exploitation of developing species. You have 1 hour to consider our proposal. The Council chamber had descended into complete pandemonium. Alien delegates were shouting at each other in languages that human ears had never heard before. Some species were frantically trying to contact their home worlds, while others seemed to be arguing about whether to flee or fight. The three massive heads at the center of the chamber turned to look at each other, then back at the small human delegation that had just overturned 2 million years of galactic order. Explain, the central head demanded, its mechanical voice cutting through the chaos. Your species achieved faster-than-light travel 50,000 years ago. Why reveal this deception only now? What purpose does this serve? Ambassador Hayek straightened his jacket and looked up at the alien tribunal with the calm expression of someone who had been planning this moment for a very long time. We revealed ourselves now because we finally decided that your council might make adequate junior partners in our economic sphere. The words hit the chamber like a physical explosion. Junior partners. The mighty Galactic Tribute Council, rulers of multiple galaxies, reduced to the status of subordinates in a human-controlled organization. Several alien species made sounds that their translators could not properly convert, presumably because their languages had no words for such complete reversal of hierarchy. Dr. Day activated her datapad, and the holographic display above the chamber shifted to show economic data that covered hundreds of star systems. Trade routes, resource flows, manufacturing centers, and financial networks formed a complex web that clearly operated outside of council control. "Your tribute system is remarkably inefficient," she said with the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. "You extract 60% of planetary resources and provide basic protection in return. Our economic model takes 30% and provides technological advancement, medical support, educational exchanges, and genuine mutual defense agreements." The display zoomed in on specific examples, showing worlds that had quietly switched from council rule to human partnership over the past several decades. Their population levels were higher, their technology was more advanced, and their people seemed genuinely happy rather than simply obedient. "Consider the Valorian system," Dr. Day continued, highlighting a cluster of worlds that several alien delegates recognized. Under council rule, they produced raw materials and basic manufactured goods. Since joining our cooperative, they have developed advanced biotechnology and are now major contributors to galactic medical research. Their standard of living has increased by 400%. A Valorian delegate in the chamber rose from its seat, its crystalline body resonating with harmonic frequencies that the translators converted into speech. The human offer was better than council terms. We chose to accept new partnership arrangements. Council was informed that our tribute payments would be reduced due to natural disasters. The three heads turned to stare at the Valorian representative with expressions that might have been shock if such emotions were possible for beings of their size and apparent age. "You have been paying reduced tribute to fund human operations." "Not reduced," the Valorian corrected politely. "Redirected. We pay 30% to human cooperative instead of 60% to council. We use remaining resources for planetary improvement projects." More delegates began to speak up from across the chamber. Species after species admitted to similar arrangements with humanity. Some had been cooperating for decades, others for only a few years, but the pattern was clear. The council's empire had been quietly hollowed out from within, while they remained completely unaware of what was happening. Lieutenant Bin's voice came through Admiral Yuna's communicator again, this time addressing the entire chamber through the translation systems. "Currently, 67% of former council tributary species have joined the Human Economic Cooperative. The remaining 33% are welcome to maintain their current arrangements if they prefer, but we should mention that their trade routes may experience some difficulties." The holographic display shifted to show shipping lanes and hyperspace routes throughout council space. Most of them were now controlled by human installations that had been disguised as natural phenomena or abandoned structures. Ships that tried to use these routes without proper authorization found themselves mysteriously delayed by gravitational anomalies that only affected vessels still operating under council flags. Captain Sue appeared in the display again, this time speaking from what was clearly the command center of a massive space station. "The transition has been remarkably smooth for most species. Those who join our cooperative maintain full political independence while gaining access to advanced technology and protected trade routes. It is a much better deal than the old tribute system." One of the insectoid delegates made a clicking sound that the translators interpreted as a question. "Human vessels, not detected by council sensors. How is this possible?" Dr. Day smiled, the expression somehow visible to aliens whose eyes worked on completely different principles than human vision. "We learned from studying your technology for 50,000 years. We developed stealth systems that work specifically against council detection methods. Your sensors are designed to look for energy signatures similar to your own technology. Our ships operate on completely different principles." The display showed technical diagrams that made several alien scientists lean forward with obvious interest. Human ships used energy sources that were not based on the fusion and antimatter, technologies that dominated council space. Instead, they tapped directly into the quantum foam that underlied all of space-time, drawing power from the universe itself in ways that council science had never imagined. More importantly, Admiral Yuna added, we studied your political and economic systems. We learned how your empire really works, and we identified its fundamental weaknesses. Your power depends on information control and the appearance of overwhelming strength. Once people realize that better alternatives exist, your system collapses. The three heads conferred again, their voices creating subsonic harmonics that made the floor of the chamber vibrate. When they turned back to address the humans, their tone had changed completely. The mechanical certainty was gone, replaced by something that might have been desperation. Terms, the central head said simply. State your terms for cooperation. Ambassador. Hayuk pulled out his briefcase and removed a document that looked remarkably ordinary considering the circumstances. It was printed on simple human paper with standard diplomatic formatting, the kind of thing that might be used for trade agreements between Earth nations. The Galactic Cooperation Charter, he announced, provides for voluntary association of spacefaring species under human coordination. Member species retain full political independence and cultural autonomy. Economic contributions are limited to 30% of surplus production, defined as resources beyond those needed for planetary welfare. All members receive access to advanced technology, medical support, and mutual defense guarantees. Dr. Day highlighted specific sections of the charter on the holographic display. Education exchanges allow member species to send students to human universities and research centers. Medical cooperation provides access to treatments and technologies that have extended human lifespan to over 200 years. And our defense agreements actually work, unlike the Council's protection racket. The chamber had grown quiet as alien delegates read through the Charter's provisions. For species that had lived under Council rule for millennia, the human offer seemed almost too good to be true. No tribute quotas, no forced labor, no systematic exploitation, just cooperation between equals with humanity providing coordination, and advanced technology. Why? Asked a delegate from one of the reptilian species. Human species possesses clear technological and military advantages. Why offer equal partnership instead of demanding submission? Admiral Yuna looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many alien representatives as possible. Because we learned something during our 50,000 years of observation. Empires built on fear and exploitation always collapse eventually. But partnerships built on mutual benefit can last forever. She activated her communicator one final time. All human forces, this is Admiral Yuna. Stand down to yellow alert. Begin implementing the standard welcome protocols for new cooperative members. Throughout the chamber, alien delegates were frantically contacting their home governments. The choice was clear and the deadline was immediate. Join the human cooperative and gain access to technology and trade opportunities beyond their wildest dreams, or remain loyal to a council system that had just been revealed as a hollow shell of its former power. The three heads at the center of the chamber sat in silence for nearly 10 minutes, their massive forms motionless as they processed the complete reversal of their situation. Finally, the central head spoke in a voice that had lost all of its mechanical authority. The Galactic Tribute Council accepts the terms of the Human Economic Cooperative. We request immediate integration into the new governmental structure. Ambassador. Hyuk nodded politely and made a note in his briefcase. Welcome to the partnership. Dr. Hay always said that the most powerful weapon in the universe is the courage to say no.